Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on when you catch this. Just want to talk a little bit today in this video about our money blueprint. I'm going to share some of my upbringing, not much, but I'm going to share a little bit about how the blueprint in my home impacted me. I can't speak for my sisters. I was the only boy in the house, so I'm just going to talk about how it impacted me. And since belief is all important, wouldn't it make sense for us to guard our thoughts? Our beliefs will be shaped to a very great extent by those things that we observe and the things that we actually think about. And, seeing that this is true, why do we spend so much time believing in things that we don't want to manifest in our lives? We can't continue to study and focus on poverty if we want to do better economically. I remember hearing a guy say that years ago, and I was thinking, well, that's easy to say when you're not living that way economically, is it? But isn't it amazing that we have all of these organizations that were formed to help poverty-stricken people, impoverished people, and the only thing that seems to increase with these organizations is more people that need help. Now, I'm gonna say, the intent of these folks who actually join these organizations are probably noble and pure in their actions and their beliefs on what the organizations say they stand for. But we have to think about this, and I mentioned it in the book, but hey, what do I know? Which is available through me at myranjones at gmail.com. You can get it autographed and personalized directly from me. But I mentioned in the book that if people that work for poverty programs and charity programs and they help people actually overcome their poverty stricken lifestyles, they would actually put themselves out of a job. So they have to give the illusion that they want to help out. But what they actually need for their organizations to continue to survive and thrive is a steady flow of poverty stricken people or impoverished people. People in poverty don't need handouts, they need hand ups. It's like that statement, give a man a fish and he eats for a day. And if you teach a man to fish, he can eat for his whole life. But I also heard another guy who was a mentor to me for a while when I was trying to get the book written and get my speaking business up and running. He said he don't want you to teach him how to fish. He said he just wants you to open the gate to the lake, get out of his way, and he'll learn how to feed himself. And I mean, we see that all the time. People put in positions where they have to do things and they figure it out. I mean, it's good if, you do get a hand. I'll have to agree with that. I've also heard that experience is the best teacher, but the wise person allows other people's experience to teach. And so poverty is a condition and poor is a state of mind. Let me put it another way. Poverty is the fear of physical appearance and poor is the mental appearance. We can overcome the outer appearance if our mindset is right, or if we're striving to make the mindset right. If our mindset's filled with the wrong things, it doesn't matter what we do. Our outer circumstances will never change. Our families do a great job in many cases making sure we focus on the wrong things. Society does an excellent job to make sure our minds are filled with garbage. Our schools do an excellent job of making sure our minds are filled with a lot of useless garbage. Our churches, let me just move on. But what are your thoughts about finances? What are your thoughts about money? What are your thoughts about economics? Now ask yourself, Where did those thoughts come from? Who taught you about money, finances, and economics? Who taught you? Now, if you learned about money, finance, and economics from people who really didn't have either, your money blueprint is also a poor one. It may not be as bad as the people who taught it to you, and it might even be worse, even if your yearly wages are more than theirs, because you have access to a lot more material goods to spend your earnings on. Everything costs a lot more than it did when our parents and grandparents were growing up and living. And some of us, parents and grandparents, move on. Some of us still have our parents and grandparents. All of my grandparents are gone. One of my parents is gone. So, it happens. But everything costs a lot more than when they grew up and lived. In more cases than not, they could actually afford a new home with one income when only the father was working. Our minds are shaped from the time our mothers carry us in the womb until age 7, and that's done without our consent. And even once we get out of the womb, our minds are shaped without our consent because we have to live with the people who shape it. In my home growing up, my stepdad always bragged about how he loved money, and he worked like a dog to earn it every time it was made available. And my mother had no respect for money, so she spent and overspent everything he worked hard for. Many marriages actually break up because of money, and it's not the abundance of it, it's the lack of it. Now, you do have a lot of marriages that break up. Sometimes, they say money was the reason, but if you dig a little bit deeper, you're going to see it's something different. So, my parents never divorced over money. They never divorced at all. They were married until my stepdad died. It's almost a little bit over 2 years ago now. Doesn't even seem like it's been that long. So they never divorced for any reason. But our home life left a lot to be desired because of the lack of money. So I had one parent who loved money and another parent who abused it. And I never could understand how my stepdad could always utter that he loved money, but claim to understand what was written in the Bible where it talks about the love of money being the root of all kinds of evil. And some translations, some improper translations, they'll tell you money is the root of all evil. Then you got some improper translations out there that say, well, the love of money is the root of all evil. The love of money is not the root of all evil, it's all kinds of evil. Because some people even don't have no money. It doesn't take a whole lot of money to engage in incest, pedophilia, you know, homosexuality, all that stuff doesn't take money. It doesn't take money to go out and kill people at will for no reason at all. Money to go out and rob people, that's just wickedness. That's evil. So, like I said, I had one parent love money and one abused it. So my stepdad loved the prospect of earning as much as he could, and my mother loved the prospect of spending everything she could. So each one of them had a love of money in their own ways. You know, although my stepdad is not the biological father of me and my sister right up under me, his thought process with money was always being taught to us because we were in the house with him. And the amazing thing about my stepdad, he always condemned rich people. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my stepdad, but I hated his thought process toward money. So although he always earned a lot of money according to society's standards, we always lived like we were poverty stricken. We were conditioned to not be poor, and we always seemed to not have enough. So you can see that our money blueprint was all messed up. What is your money blueprint? What are your beliefs about money? What thought process was passed to you about money? The school system never teaches business ownership or entrepreneurship. Society doesn't encourage either one of them either. The church never teaches it and will condemn you if you miss church to go to work, but they sure know how to ask for that money that they condemn you for going to earn. The Ten Commandments says to keep the Sabbath day holy, but the New Testament doesn't give that command. So if preachers want to abide by the Sabbath day, by the Ten Commandments, they're worshiping on the wrong day anyway, because the Sabbath day doesn't fall on Sunday. So if a man needs to work on Sunday, he is actually within his biblical right to do so. What does Hebrews 13 and 15 say? Most of us in society have had poor training when it comes to proper economics, money, and finances. I don't know about you, but I got one semester of economics in high school and one semester in college. Well, let me rephrase that. I actually got 2 semesters of economics in college because my economics professor called me to his office one day to tell me he was going to fail me because I wasn't being a good student, according to him, and even my high school economics teacher, because both of them said I challenged them too much. Both of them said I asked too many questions. But see, I was going to the libraries checking out books on economics because I felt like something was missing. So what I was learning out those books I was reading or checking out of the library wasn't lining up with what I was being taught in classes. So I had major issues when they were trying to teach me. How many of us were taught in school or growing up in our homes to balance a checkbook or to properly gamble? Not gamble. Invest in the stock market. How many of us were taught to understand financial reports or move to the right side of the financial quadrant? Now, if you don't know what the financial quadrant is, get the book, The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. Most of us were taught to earn on the left side of the quadrant. The left side will always keep us exchanging hours for dollars. Now, I'm not putting that down. But if we want to come up economically, it can be done on that side, but that's the hardest way to do it. The right side of the quadrant is for the people who learn how to play the financial game the right way. Now, again, I ask, what is your financial blueprint? What were you taught about money? And the people who own the left side of the quadrant have taught us how to be so involved in earning that we can't focus on building anything for ourselves. Well, at least in theory, that's what we seem to believe. Because if we turned off the attention grabbers, the TV, social media, professional sports, and the housewives of every city, we could focus on ways to increase our income. Those people we are watching are earning their paycheck by having us watch them. They won't know if you stop watching them. Trust me. David Hasselhoff didn't check with me when I was growing up to see if I would get upset when they canceled the television show Knight Rider. So we end up spending a lot of our time like a hamster on a wheel. If y'all ever had hamsters, I never had a hamster, but I had a couple of cousins that had one, and I just didn't like cleaning up behind pets like that. I've had dogs all my life, but my dogs always been outside once they got big enough where they couldn't fit through the gate and all that stuff. But we keep spending a lot of time like hamsters on the wheel. We keep running around in circles and getting the cost of living raises sometimes. And when I say running around in circles, think about your daily, a lot of people are working from home now since the pandemic, situation actually came out. On a physical aspect, it was already out there mentally, but but there's still a lot of people that have to go in every day. So you get up, get dressed, you go one way, you turn. At the end of the day, you turn, drive your car back the other way. So in essence, you're driving in a circle. And like I said, I'm not putting it down. I did that for a lot of years too. And sometimes I know for one period I had 2 jobs at one time. And other times, I had job, full-time job. In the evening, I had a little furniture similar business I was doing on the weekends. I was having a little DJing business going. So I was working. But isn't it amazing that the more hours we put in, the more part-time jobs we get? Just never seems like we can get ahead because we haven't changed the mentality about how we earn. we're still trying to earn the same way, and that's why we can't get ahead. So we're running around in circles. We get the cost of living raises. So let's just say you make 75,000 a year. And I'm just using that as an example. And the company calls you in for your yearly review, and they give you a $5,000 raise. Say you such a good employee. Now it looks good at the end of the year, but how much did you actually get? And if you like me, you do math in reverse. I would look at that $5,000 and divide it by 12 months to see how much I really earned before my uncle stepped in and take a cut, even though he never worked a day. Ain't that amazing? We spend all the time working, and then before we ever see the money we earn, Uncle Sam step in and say, "Give me my cut." You ain't putting no hours in, brother. So doing math in reverse, I divide 5,000 by 12. Now, regardless of your income level, $5,000 divided by 12 is $417 a month before taxation. Now, let's say you're one of the really fortunate ones and you get a $10,000 raise. That translates to about $833 a month before taxes. Now, there's some things you need to pay attention to. First, I already mentioned the taxes. Second, you need to see what inflation is at the time you got the raise. Third thing happens is when most people get a raise, instead of saving the money, they increase their spending, they increase their lifestyle. Many of us have heard that you should save money for a rainy day, and a rainy day always seems to appear. You know what a rainy day appears? Because we've been conditioned throughout our entire lives that something will always happen to take away the money we've saved for the rainy day. So we live with the expectation that we're going to eventually have to use that money to cover an emergency expense. You know why? That goes to our belief system. That goes to the mental conditioning we've put in our brains. So the thing, what is that? I think in the book of Job, he said, the thing that I feared the most is upon me. We're mentally conditioning that that money is going to have to be taken and applied somewhere else that's going to automatically be an emergency. So we've conditioned ourselves. It's kind of like when a child gets in an accident, and one of the first things out of the mother's mouth will be, "I knew it. I knew he was going to get in an accident on that motorcycle." Well, see, she's already prepped her mind that something bad was going to happen. So all we're doing when we get that amount of money saved up, we're prepping our mind that something else is going to come up and take it away from us. And guess what happens? Something always comes up to take it away from us. And isn't it amazing? Whatever comes up is the exact amount that you've put up. You know why? Because you've conditioned yourself that that was going to happen. I read a book years ago called The Magic of Believing. And our belief system is real strong, and it's very important to how we condition it. So the rainy day always appears as long as you condition yourself that it's going to appear. So we live with the expectation that we're going to eventually have to use that money to cover an emergency expense. How about creating a savings account and an emergency fund? But you see, we haven't been conditioned that way. We've been conditioned to expect to lose what we've saved already. It's like the fire extinguisher boxes that say, in case of emergency, break glass. That's how many of us live our lives financially. In case of emergency, dip into the savings accounts to cover the emergency. Break the glass. That's what it's there for. Break the glass in case of emergency. We are conditioned to lack, and lack. In order to change our financial blueprint, we have to change our mental blueprint. If our blueprint has been one filled with lack, we have to work to dilute that input. You never get rid of anything you've learned subconsciously. So you have to increase the good and the positive in order to dilute the bad and the negative that you've already experienced. It takes anywhere from 16 to 20 positives to dilute one negative thought process or event. Now, regardless of what your income is right now, if you want to improve or increase it, You're going to have to change your mental money blueprint. It's going to take some work, but you better stop listening to broke people about finances. Yeah, some folks are going to actually take issue with the things I'm talking about here because they've been conditioned to be poor and broke. So anything that challenges that belief system will threaten them, and they will always have something contrary to say. Pastors will tell you that you shouldn't worry about how much you earn, but they always make sure to promote that faulty tithing doctrine to make sure you give your 10. They tell you not to worry about how much you earn, but they tell you how much you better give. Amazing how that works. Some of them even got to a world that they teach on top of your obligation. You should save. Say you should give sacrificially. And I never put down sacrificial giving. Don't take that wrong. But up until I educated myself, I was faithfully tithing, faithfully. But I educated myself, and I don't tithe anymore. Not like they teach anyway. Tithing is food. It's always been food. But anyway, but any pastor that actually teaches you give out an obligation is teaching legalism. And there's a pastor I listen to, and he's passed on, but he had got to the point where he was teaching from Galatians 6:6 before every sermon, and said, read it for yourself, which I did. And he said, he believes you should give out an obligation. That's a red flag to me. And, he said Galatians 6:6 proves it. Well, I think I read about 57, 58 different versions of the Bible on that particular scripture. And I think 6 of them said you give money, and the other ones didn't. So I don't listen to that. Another pastor said if your pastor's up there asking for money, he said you probably need to stop listening. Then he said your pastor need a job. So any pastor that teaches tithing is teaching coveting and legalism. How can teachers and professors teach you about economics if they're broke? So if they're teaching these matters of finance and they're broke, they're only teaching theory because they don't even believe what they're teaching works. If you're getting financial advice from family members and friends, you're not making it financially, that means they are either also broke or they are not sharing the information they use to do better economically. We go to school to learn all of the how-tos on every subject except finances. As I stated, we're not taught by our parents in schools how to balance a checkbook. We're not taught proper account measures. We're not given enough time to study the stock market or the day's new thing, cryptocurrency, in school or at home. The only way we're going to do better financially is to change the input from what we've already received. Now, I've wrapped a lot of things around this topic of money, but when it all comes down to it, your money blueprint is going to come down to one thing: changing your mindset regarding money. As long as you earn and keep money in its proper place, you should be fine. I'm a firm believer and follower of the Bible, so don't let anyone professing to be wise in biblical matters tell you that you should feel guilty about talking about increasing your income. I run into a lot of people, all we should be focused on is God. 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 Well, you're not going to ever hear me dispute focusing on God. But isn't it amazing that the Bible teaches us how to focus on a whole lot of other things right along with honoring God? Money's not that, they tell you money ain't that important, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember exactly how many scriptures it is, but it's more scriptures in talking about money in the Bible than any other subject matter in there, even faith, even belief. So don't let these so-called biblical experts tell you any different. You got pastors out there, they do a message and here come they right in my Cash App or here my Zelle information or here my Patreon account. But they'll sit there and tell you, don't you focus on money. But here we are again with all of this stuff set up. What they focus on, money. So And it's not always pastors. It's a lot of people in the church that have that thought process too. And people like that who always got an issue with you talking about money that's so biblical, so godly, they ain't never turned down a raise on their job. They have never told the boss not to deposit that check when they take their vacation. So I think I'm gonna get close to wrapping this up. I'm not gonna say too much. I'm still trying to keep it within a certain time frame. I get out of pocket every now and then. This is actually gonna be a lot longer because I wanted to kind of talk about a video in the same kind of sense on our health. Because, many of you know I've, been battling some health issues, and a lot of what I've been battling, practically everything I've been battling had nothing to do with me. It all came from the so-called experts, the medical doctors, you know, gave me chronic kidney disease and then gonna try to give me the treatment to fix it. And as long as I was following their treatment, they weren't getting any better. Come off of their treatment, and all of a sudden, my kidneys function greatly improved. Because I went in the hospital, my kidneys were functioning as someone who was 30 years old, and I was 47 when I went in. And they come in a room one day after had been there 7 days talking about you in stage 3B of chronic kidney disease because of what they had done to me. And that's just one other thing. I'm not going to get into all that other stuff. I might, like I said, I plan on doing one about health, and I might touch on some of that stuff a little bit more now, but just talk about how a belief is either helping us get better or it's helping us increase our disease. Because you can't increase your income if you make it a habit to focus on poverty or the lack of finances. I read a book years ago titled Positive Imaging, and it talks about how to picture in our minds what it is we're seeking instead of focusing on what we're currently experiencing. And like I said, I've listened to a lot of guys teach, and one guy says, focus on what you want, not on what you have. And this guy, he's passed on now, and he was very wealthy when he was living. He left his wife pretty good. But it's amazing that society is teaching us to focus on what we have, not on what we want. And that's amazing. We don't hear a lot of, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what children are being taught in school today, but we were never taught about setting goals in school. The teachers already had the goal plan set for us called in the syllabus. We never had a teacher talk to us about your desire other than teaching us not to lust after the opposite sex while we were in school. That was the only desire they ever talked about. When I played football, the goals I was following was the goals of the coach. So nobody was teaching me, I can't speak for anybody else, about setting goals, about having dreams, about finances. All they were talking about when I was growing up was, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody ever asked me, how do you want to live? See, that's a big difference. And see, when they start asking you those questions, you start thinking of a profession, you're already conditioning yourself mentally on the type of income you're going to earn. And, some of you heard me actually mention about in vacation Bible school. I don't even think I was 10 years old at the time, and a Bible school teacher asked all of us what we want to be. And then after everybody said something, he went around the room and gave us every reason on every profession about why that's not what he wanted to do. He should have never had access to us as children. Love you guys. Talk to you later.